Hi everybody, it's Amy with Sweetheart Bake Shop. I wanted to touch base on how to maintain your sourdough starter, a little more information that I didn't give before. The video I gave before was just on feeding her, but I want to talk about her 3 stages. I've been receiving a few messages, which is fantastic. With all the sourdough starters that we have handed out, I've gotten 4 messages, which really isn't very many, but good questions, and I figured I should answer them now because when everybody is said and done and this quarantine is over and everybody's heading back to school and work, you're not going to be around the house making bread as much as you are right now. So you really should know what to look for on your sourdough starter. So first and foremost, please don't be scared of her. You're not going to kill her. She is strong, okay? And I'm going to give you a perfect example. So in 2017 is when we opened up the bakery here, March of 2017. So in 2015, that spring, I actually divided her up into 4 half-gallon mason jars. And I did not touch her for 2 years. So I left her in 2015 and did not touch her until after we opened the bakery in 2017. So she was thick. She was solid at the bottom. She was clay. She had liquid, lots of grayish liquid on top. She is not dead. She's hibernating, and she's been hibernating for quite a while. So at that point, I really did want to reactivate her and bring her back so that I could use her in the bakery. That was my goal. But just so you know, that was fresh yeast. That was fresh yeast. And this sourdough starter, all she is natural yeast. You're maintaining and collecting natural yeast. She's not a biga or a sponge, which is part of French baking. That basically, those are like starters, they're starters. But it's like you made part of your dough ahead of time and you let it sit and do fermentation or ferment, which is what gives you really good flavor. Because dough, the longer it sits, the better flavor it gets. A sourdough starter or a natural yeast is one that you create. It takes you quite a while to get her going, but once you have her, you just maintain her. And that is just natural yeast. That's all she is. And she has a lifetime. This can stick with you for the rest of your entire life, and you can pass it on to your kids, and they can pass it on to their kids. There are starters out there that are over 100 years old. Okay, back in the ancient days, I sound stupid when I say this, so I apologize, but to give you a little history, there was no dry active yeast. Yeast was natural. So there was one person in the village who had the starter, who would have the sourdough starter or the yeast. And everybody in the village who was making bread would come to that person and they would divide up that starter and they would hand out that yeast. When they made their breads, that whatever leftover they would have, their dough, they would bring it back to this person and this person would feed it back into the mother. And again, it would sit. And that's how you made bread. There was no dry active yeast. So this is the mother, okay? And what we've done over the last few weeks of handing her out was the same kind of thing. We are the village. I was the bread maker. I handed out my natural yeast around. You guys are now making bread. You don't have to bring anything back to me though. But anyhow, so just so you know, you're not going to kill her, okay? So there are 3 stages, and this is what you're going to need to know when you stop using her as much as you are now. There are 3 stages to your starter. Stage number 1, you just fed her. So that's where you don't need no rubber bands on her. You don't need to watch her. Well, I like to watch her because it's entertaining to me, but okay, that's when she's going to be bubbly and really active, and all those gases that she has happening because she's eating is going to make her build up, and she's going to become almost twice the size of what you started. And that is all that gas. Those are all the bubbles and the gas, and she's eating, she's excited, she's feasting. That's stage number 1. You can use her if you want in that stage. She won't have as much flavor though because you just fed her. So it's almost like you diluted her down a little bit, but she's eating and all those gases are there. So if you use her the next day, she's going to have some more flavor to her. So stage number 2. Stage number 2 is after she has eaten. This will be the next day, if not 2 days, maybe even 3 days later. She's going to look more like pancake batter, okay? She's going to be beautiful color. She's going to have some bubbles in her, but she's going to have deflated some because she doesn't have all those active gases going on right now because she is not eating. Right now, she's digesting. She's very calm. She's content. She's happy. You have she has fed, you've nourished her. She is now just kind of mellow. She's chilling. She's okay. She's perfectly able to use at any time you want during those days without having to feed her again. She's fine. Okay, stage number 3. So stage 3 is when she has sat for a long period of time with no feeding. She starts to want to go to sleep and is going to hibernate. Now that's when she starts to have a little bit of liquid forming to the top. She starts to look a little heavy and dense, and she almost gets a grayish color to her, mostly because of that liquid. The grayish color is perfectly fine. She's normal. This is a fungus, okay? Natural yeast, fresh yeast, is basically, it's a fungus. It's a fungus. It's a good fungus. You know, there's good bacteria, there's bad bacteria. This is a good fungus. You can use her, but she's just a fungus, okay? So she is going to look ugly. She's going to look scary. You're going to think, oh my God, I can't digest and eat that. How can I use her? And you're going to think you need to throw her out. No, do not throw her out. You're going to be throwing away your baby. So stage 3 will be hibernation and sleeping, and she will look gross. And she, like I said, so the liquid, as she sets, the longer she sets asleep and hibernating, the thicker the liquid usually gets, the denser and more grayish kind of ugly color she gets. And if she doesn't turn gray, that's okay too. But, you know, if she does, just to tell you, that's not a bad thing. Don't be scared of it. But anyhow, she's hibernating. She's fine. So your options at that point is just put her in a good sealed container that she's not going to get cross-contaminated with bugs, because that smell, that sourdough smell, those gases do attract gnats and ants and other bugs, and you do not want her getting contaminated, because then you do have to throw her away. Okay, so anyhow, so you have choices. So you can either put her in the cupboard, put her in your pantry. If you want to put her in the fridge, if you feel comfortable, because she's not going to get tampered with by anybody, you can, but fridge is not necessary. Really, she can just sit on the counter. So you just let her be, okay? So if at this point, if you're not planning on making any bread, if you're going to make bread for somebody's birthday or for the holidays or for, you know, you have guests coming over, but you haven't made bread in like several weeks to a couple months, she is hibernating. You need to give yourself 3 days of feeding. And in order to jumpstart her feeding, you need to feed her half her weight. So I, on average, gave out anywhere from 12 to 14 ounces of starter. So 14 ounces is the perfect number. I wouldn't go above 16, but 14 ounces is the perfect number. So let's say you have about 14 ounces of her. You want to give her a jump start. You need to feed her half her weight, which means you need to feed her 7 ounces of feed. 7 ounces of feed is half water, half flour. So 3.5 ounces of water, 3.5 ounces of flour, mix it all together. Now because she's going to be a little thicker and denser, you can either feed that liquid back into her, which really is just flavor, but it's going to make her watery, but it'll be easier to work with her, and you can feed her your feed and let her sit for, you know, to eat, and it'll take her a few, but she's going to start bubbling, and all those gases are going to start working, and she's going to be starting to come awake. She's going to be excited because you're starting to feed her. Then the next day, you can feed her again, but again, I would feed her half her weight, because you're giving her a jump start, you're giving her lots of activity, she hasn't eaten for a long time. It's just like any of us. If we haven't eaten for a long time, we want a smorgasbord, okay? So you're gonna feed her half her weight again. And then the third day, you more likely don't have to feed her half the weight. You can if you want, but you need to feed her a good amount to keep her active one more time. But again, she's going to be bubbly. She's going to double and triple in that size, and she's going to grow a lot. So make sure the container you have her in is going to be able to accommodate that so it doesn't spill all over the place. Anyhow, so then on day 4, she's ready to use. She's active, she's eaten, she's digested, she's got good flavor, she's ready to use. And you can go back to making bread or whatever it is you plan on making. Now at this point, because she was hibernating and because you had to feed her half her weight for 3 days, you know, she is going to build up and become kind of a monster. It's going to be way much more than you need. And if you try to maintain that, it's going to cost you a lot of flour and a lot of water. And the heavier she gets, the more you keep maintaining that, the more you have to feed. So if you got like a 40-ounce starter at this point, okay, you're going to have to feed her 20 ounces of feed, which is 10 ounces of flour, 10 ounces of water. You feed her that. Then when you're ready to feed her again to maintain that, you got to feed her half that weight again. So the bigger she gets, the more you have to feed her. And before you know it, you're going to be feeding her an entire bag of flour. And there is no need for it because you don't need her. You only need, most recipes only call for 6, 8, 10 ounces of flour. Some of them are only 3 ounces, or not flour, I'm sorry, sourdough starter. So you really don't need 40 ounces of starter. So at that point, she's become out of control. You have too much. So you have choices. You can either divide her up. I would separate and pull out 14 to 16 ounces for you. Put it in a nice new jar or container. Save that. And then the remaining, you have choices. If you want fresh, natural yeast, you know what? Put her in a jar. It takes a long time. It takes several months to a couple years. I mean, it really just depends on how dry your area is, how long you let her sit, the area you let her sit in. But, you know, you can create and make yourself some fresh yeast. It's a nice science experiment. It's fun to do with the kids. It's fun to show them how flour and water can turn into, you know, watch the fungus grow. So it is a fun experiment. And then you have fresh, natural yeast. Right now, currently, we are, we have developed over the years, and to make yeast last longer, stay longer, spread throughout the world, they have developed dry. They have dried it out and developed dry active yeast. Now, dry yeast is just like dried herbs and just like sun-dried tomatoes, you know. It's concentrated. So when you use your fresh yeast, if your recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of dry active yeast, you'll probably have to use 4 teaspoons of your fresh yeast to make up for it because it's not dry. But that's okay. It's just fresh yeast. Okay, so moving on. Or you can divide it up and give it away to friends. Again, this is a sharing thing. This is, you know, share with your friends, share the love. You have something that's been working great. You have lots of it now. Maybe you divide it up and give it to a couple friends. That is awesome. There is also your not discharge, but your oh my goodness, I'm drawing a brain fart. Sorry. Your discarded. There's discarded starter. So discarded starter, that term has actually been around forever, but it's becoming more popular right now. We're seeing a lot more recipes and hearing more about it because everybody is now at home making starters and making bread, and so now we have our extra, our discard. So you can use all that discard. All the discard starter is the stuff that you're tossing out, giving away, setting aside to make fresh yeast, whatever it is. It's the stuff you're trying to get rid of because you don't want to maintain it. And so you can use that to make things too. So you don't have to refeed it. You don't have to maintain it. You just have to divide it up into some recipes and make extra bread, make extra scones or pancakes for the kids, or I mean, whatever you want to do. It's your discard. So if you see a discard starter recipe, that's what it is. It's just the stuff that you don't want to maintain. So easy peasy. Those are your options. So those are your 3 stages. You have, she's actively eating. She's in the middle of her meal. She's feeding at this point. That's when it becomes real bubbly, gassy, and she gets lots of volume to her. That's great. Stage 2, that's where you want to keep her. You want to keep her at the pancake stage where she's got some bubbles, she looks beautiful, she is digesting, she ate, she may not be gassy and, you know, volume-wise, she deflated a little bit because those gases went down, but she is maintained. You can use her, that's great. And then stage 3 is when she starts developing that liquid and she starts getting heavy and dense. She's hibernating. She's going into hibernation mode. And that at that point, she's not dead. You didn't kill her. You just either decide whether you're going to set her aside and let her sleep until a better day you want to use her again, or you feed her. Start waking her back up again. You need to feed her half her weight to get her going again because you got her to that point she's starting to hibernate. And then don't let her get out of control. Don't feed her so much to maintain that first stage that now you have created this monster and you're going to end up having to, you know, take out a loan buying flour to feed her. You know, use her. Use the discards and other recipes. Set some aside in a jar and start making some fresh, natural, fresh yeast, or give her away to a friend's, you know, or I hate to say it, or just dump her, just throw her in the trash. It's better than maintaining and wasting flour and water in your time on something you absolutely don't need. So just try to keep her at that 14 ounces, 16 ounce mark so that you always have some to use. And again, just let her do her 3 stages. She's beautiful and it's exciting to see her when she first eats. Stage 2 is really what you're just trying to maintain, which you can maintain that by just replacing what you use. So if you make two loaves a week, 2 to 3 loaves a week, you use her 2 or 3 times, just replace what you use, like I said in the video before. So most of the recipes, if it's 8 ounces of sourdough starter, you replace the 8 ounces with 4 ounces of water, 4 ounces of flour, put it back in her. If it's 6 ounces, the recipe calls for, like my loaf of sourdough bread, you're gonna replace 6 ounces, 3 ounces of water, 3 ounces of flour, mix it together, put it in there. So if you just replace what you use, you're not only maintaining your size of your starter, but you're feeding her along the way, which keeps her active. So you do not have to constantly maintain stage 1. That's going to let her get out of control, and you're going to have to feed her way too much to maintain her. And if you don't feed her too much to maintain her, she's going to stage 3, and she's going to get non-active to begin with if you're not feeding her enough, okay? So really, you're shooting to maintain her in stage 2. That's all it is. It's going to take stage 1 to get her to stage 2. Stage 3, if you got to stage 3, you have a choice to either set her aside and let her sleep and don't worry about her, or you have to start feeding her for the 3 days if you plan on using her again. That's all. And when you get to stage 3 and you have to feed her for those 3 days and maintain half her weight, at that point you're going to have the discard, and that's what you can do. You can either give some away, you can make some of those discard sourdough recipes, or you can use her as a science experiment and make some fresh yeast. It's as easy as that, you guys. You're not going to kill her. Don't be scared of her. Those are her 3 stages. That's all she's ever going to do. She's either going to, stage 1, feed her active. Stage 2 is what you're shooting for. She's pancake, ready to go. She's happy camper. Or stage 3, she's hibernating. Okay? If you guys have any questions, I'm sorry this video got a little longer than I expected. If you have any questions, feel free to send me messages. I hope this really helps. And the only reason why I have her sitting here is just so you know, she's in stage 2. I haven't fed her for 2 days because I have absolutely no need to. I'll probably feed her tomorrow. Okay? So anyhow, you guys know. Have a good day. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.